Everybody's got patterns in their life that they're stuck in. They maybe know about them, maybe they don't know about them, but no matter what, it causes them pain. And that's what we're calling the matrix. And so this video is all about how to get out of the matrix. And so that means really understanding how it works, learning how to notice when you're in it. And then the third thing is how to get out of those patterns. So what happens is when we're kids, we get told that certain emotions aren't okay. And what that means is like we get told, hey, stop being so excited, or boys don't cry, or girls don't get angry, or maybe we get bribed out of it, like we get fed so we don't feel something, or we get told we can't have temper tantrums or whatever. We have these emotional experiences that are built to run all the way through us and get back to regulation, and we're told we can't have them. The issue is that we are like cells and we're trying to get back to homeostasis. If for whatever reason that emotion doesn't go all the way through us and we don't get back to homeostasis, we start creating these patterns in our life over and over again so that we can feel that emotional experience and get back to homeostasis. So a simple example of this that you probably can all recognize is we all know that person who's been dating the same person over and over and over and over again. It's like different face, different driver's license, but it's the same emotional abandonment over and over again, or the same abuse or the same criticism over and over and over again. So how does that work? So you're a little kid, you have this father or mother who has emotionally abandoned you. And of course, as a kid, you can't fully feel that. And so that emotion never gets fully felt, doesn't go all the way through. And if it doesn't go all the way through, then your body needs to recreate a scenario over and over again to allow that feeling to happen. So my work as a coach all the time, one of the things that I see is if somebody keeps on dating somebody who's emotionally abandoned them, when they fully embrace the abandonment feeling, they fall in love with it and recognize the signal that it's actually sending them and recognize how it's protecting them. Then they stop dating people who emotionally abandon them, and they stop creating emotional abandonment in their life. So this kind of pattern can work in a ton of ways. You might find that you keep on having the same kind of boss. You might find that you keep on having the same kind of girlfriend. You might find that you keep on getting in fights. You might find out that you keep on getting into physically uncomfortable positions in like dangerous situations. You might find that you keep on being criticized by everybody. You might notice that you keep on being defensive in a workplace. So there's a lot of ways that this pattern can over and over again repeat itself. And the solution is always the same, which is fully embracing the emotion that you're avoiding. So now let's move on to how to notice when you're in the matrix, when you're in the pattern itself. We often are creating pain in our lives which we can't even see. And so if you can learn how to see when you're in the pattern, you can get to a lot of freedom very, very quickly. So the way you do it is in three parts. One, notice any emotion you're avoiding. So you go and jump on your phone. What's the emotion you're avoiding? Oh, you're judging somebody. What's the emotion you're avoiding? Oh, you're feeling guilt, but there's an emotion underneath it. What's the emotion underneath it? What's the emotion you're avoiding? Second step, notice how you avoid having that feeling. So let's say when I was emotionally abandoned as a kid, the way that I would avoid that feeling is I'd get really hard. I'd be like, I'd defend myself. That would be one of the ways that I would, not get abandoned. And the other way, say, is that I would make people dependent on me so that I would create an environment where they needed me enough where I was not going to be emotionally abandoned. So that would be another way I did it. So you notice how exactly you're avoiding that emotional state. And then the third part is to notice how that avoidance actually brings the emotion to you. It doesn't actually get rid of it, or it doesn't actually allow you to avoid it. So back to my example, every time I went, because I wasn't going to be emotionally abandoned by you, it pushed you away. So of course I'm going to get more emotionally abandoned. Or every time I tried to make you dependent, then there was this moment where I felt all alone. Like I couldn't depend on anybody because I was always the helper. And then I'm like, oh my God, I've been abandoned again because I have to do this all on my own again. So now let's get into how to break through the pattern. And there's obviously some part of it that you probably already grok, which is to feel the emotion all the way through. So that's one part of it. But another really important part of it is actually learning to welcome it. And this is a little tricky for a couple reasons, so let's get into it. When you start to really invite it, it goes away. Like the emotion stops happening. And so you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to do this thing to make it go away. But then you're not welcoming it anymore. And it's like such a head trip But as soon as you're doing any of these practices to get rid of the emotion, it basically becomes the avoidance that invites it towards you. So the real trick is to have a deep welcoming of the emotional experience. So a couple things you can do is, one, you can find out what the signal is for the emotional experience. So angry might mean, oh, I have a boundary that I need to draw. And so, wow, I'm allowed to feel anger because it tells me I need to draw a boundary, or it gives me a sense of clarity. There's a gift in this emotional experience, and so I can actually look forward to it. I can welcome it. Oh, I'm anxious. That might mean that I'm not saying my whole truth. I'm holding something in, and since I don't feel safe that I can be myself, of course I have anxiety. So that tells me, oh, here's a place where I need to speak my truth. So one is to find the signal throughout all the noise of an emotion. The second is to really learn how intelligent it is. When you really express anger for a while, you'll notice you get to clarity. When you really express anxiety for a while, you notice that the anxiety dissipates and it brings a new conclusion. So to actually express it without any judgment, without telling yourself you shouldn't express it, really allows you to see things from a new perspective. All the time I see people having a hard time making a decision. They express their feeling and then boom, that decision gets made much, much more easily. The third is to notice that when you're actually curious about it, it's all just sensation, and it can all be kind of cool and pleasurable. Anger can be very invigorating. Anxiety can be very alive. It can turn into like an excitement. Sadness and joy, they're really close to each other. We notice, so we'll cry over a sunset and we'll cry over the loss of, say, our pet. And there's something really close to the feeling of those two things. And it creates a gratitude in the system. So if we stop resisting the emotional experience, we learn that there's actually quite a bit of pleasure in them and that we can savor them. And it makes no sense to our head, but our body will learn it right away. In fact, most of the stuff that you feel that's uncomfortable in an emotional experience is the resistance to it, not the thing itself. So for instance, let's say you need to go to the bathroom and you're not going to the bathroom. It's not going to the bathroom that's uncomfortable. It's resisting it that's uncomfortable. It's exactly the same way with an emotion. It's resisting it that's actually the discomfort. Another way to look at it is that the matrix itself is energized by your resistance. And as soon as you become undefended to your own emotional experience, you can fall in love with it. Then you get energized instead of the matrix getting energized. And the greatest phrase that I've ever heard around this is, I just love this one, and it is, in a war with yourself, you always lose. In a war with your emotions, you always lose. The thing that makes this hard is that a lot of people are scared that they will lose control if they allow their emotional experiences. So usually, if I allow myself to get angry, I'll destroy everything I love. If I allow myself to be sad, I will be sad forever. If I allow myself to be scared, I won't be able to do anything. But it doesn't work that way at all, as it turns out. If you allow yourself to be sad, if you allow a good cry, you feel better at the end of it. It's when you resist sadness that depression starts happening. When you allow yourself to feel anger, not at anybody, not in a way that creates shame, not in a way that destroys anything, but just by yourself getting angry, you get to clarity. You get to actually the creative energy behind anger, because there's nothing that we get angry about that we don't care for deeply. We wouldn't get angry otherwise. And same thing, if you allow yourself to feel the fear completely, courage just falls out of that. Excitement just falls out of that. So if you want to do something really practical around this, here's an experiment that you can try out. Every day, at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, you notice an emotion that you've been avoiding and you bring it into the emotional inquiry. You just do that every day for 2 weeks. Every day for 2 weeks. And notice how much your life changes. All right, thanks for coming. We appreciate you watching the video. If you liked it and you want more, hit subscribe and like, and leave any comments in the bottom of any kind of content that you want us to produce.